I'm going to ask you a question that most people are too polite to ask. But if you are over the age of 60, your answer to this question could quite literally save your life. When was the last time you actually looked at your stool before flushing? I know, it's not a pleasant topic. We were raised in a generation where bathroom habits stayed behind closed doors. But silence is a luxury we can no longer afford. There is one specific type of bowel movement, one shape and one consistency. That is the single most ignored warning sign of colorectal cancer in seniors. Most people see it and think, oh, I just need more fiber, or I'm just getting older. They ignore it for months. And by the time they finally tell a doctor, the window for easy treatment has started to close. Today, I am going to tell you exactly what that worst type of stool is. I'm going to explain the bottleneck effect happening inside your body, and I'm going to give you the exact words you need to say to your doctor to make sure you are taken seriously. If you see this in the toilet bowl tomorrow morning, you cannot afford to wait. So, let's get straight to the point. What exactly is this worst type of stool? In medical textbooks, doctors use a very specific term, narrow caliber stool. But in the exam room, we usually just call them pencil stools. To understand why this is so dangerous, I want you to close your eyes for a second and visualize your anatomy. Your colon, the large intestine, is essentially a long, flexible, muscular garden hose. It's about 5 feet long, and its primary job is to process waste. When your body is functioning perfectly, that hose is wide open. As waste moves through, it naturally expands to fill the space of the tube. This results in what we consider a healthy, normal stool, a solid, well-formed, rounded cylinder. But here's where things take a turn. Imagine if you took that garden hose and you stepped on it. Or imagine if, inside that hose, a layer of debris started to build up on one side, hardening over time. What happens to the water trying to get through? It doesn't stop entirely, but it has to change shape to survive the gap. It becomes a thin, high-pressure stream because that's the only way it can fit through the remaining opening. That is exactly what happens inside your colon when a growth, like a polyp or a tumor, begins to develop on the inner lining. In the early stages, a tumor might be small and you won't notice a thing. But as we cross into our 60s and 70s, these growths can reach a size where they act like a physical blockade. They start to encroach on the tunnel. Now, as waste travels down toward the exit, it hits this bottleneck. What you see in the bowl, because the tumor is taking up 50%, 60%, or even 70% of the space inside the tube. The waste has to squeeze, compress, and flatten itself just to get past the obstruction. When it finally exits your body, it doesn't look like the rounded cylinder you've seen your whole life. Instead, you're going to see the pencil shape, stools that are no thicker than a standard number 2 pencil. The ribbon effect, stools that look flat, like a piece of fettuccine pasta or a discarded ribbon. The string stool, fragments that look like thin pieces of twine. Now, I want to be very clear here, because I don't want you to panic over a single bad day. We have all had moments where our diet was off. Maybe we didn't drink enough water, or we took a new medication that changed things for 24 hours. That is usually just a temporary transit issue. But if you are over 60, we are looking for a permanent change in character. If you notice that for 5 days, 7 days, or 2 weeks straight, every single time you look down, the shape is thin and narrow, that is not a diet issue. You cannot fiber your way out of a physical obstruction. In fact, if there is a tumor blocking the path, eating a giant bowl of bran or taking a bunch of bulk-forming laxatives can actually make you feel worse because you're trying to force a massive amount of bulk through a tiny, narrow straw. This is your body's early warning system. It is a physical mechanical signal. It's your colon saying, "The path is blocked. Something is in my way." The location factor, the reason this sign is so vital is that pencil-thin stools usually point to a problem in the left side of your colon or the rectum. This is the end of the line. Because the stool is more solid by the time it reaches this area, the shape it takes here is the shape it keeps. If a growth is sitting right at the exit, it's going to mold your stool into that thin shape every single time. If you are seeing this, your body isn't just suggesting something is wrong, it is screaming it. And because we are over 60, we have to listen. We have to stop being embarrassed about the shape of our waist and start treating it like the vital sign that it truly is. Now, I want to speak directly to those of you who have celebrated your 60th birthday and beyond. Why is this message specifically for you? It's because of a dangerous phenomenon I call the normalization trap. As we age, our bodies naturally go through a slowing down process. You felt it. Maybe your joints are a little stiffer in the morning, or you don't have the same energy you did at 30. Inside your body, your digestive tract, your gut motility also slows down. The muscles that move waste through your system aren't as snappy as they used to be. Because of this, many seniors become accustomed to a certain level of digestive struggle. You might deal with occasional constipation, bloating, or irregularity, and you think to yourself, well, this is just what happens when you turn 65. The danger of just constipation. When you see your stool becoming thin or narrow, your first instinct, the one we've been taught for decades, is to say, "I'm just backed up. I need more fiber. I need another glass of prune juice." But here is the life-saving distinction you need to understand. Normal age-related constipation changes the frequency of your movements, but it rarely changes the physical caliber, the width of the movement for weeks on end. If a tumor is what's causing that pencil-thin shape, no amount of fiber, no amount of water, and no amount of over-the-counter laxatives will change the shape of that tunnel inside you. In fact, and this is very important, increasing your fiber intake when you have a physical blockage can actually be painful. You are essentially trying to force a larger bulk of waste through an opening that has been narrowed by a growth. It's like trying to shove a thick rope through a needle's eye. It causes intense bloating, cramping, and a feeling of heavy pressure that just won't go away. Statistically, the game changes after age 60. This is the era of the polyp. Think of a polyp as a tiny, mushroom-like growth on the wall of your colon. In your 20s and 30s, these are rare. But as we move into our 60s, 70s, and 80s, the cells in our colon have replicated billions of times, and sometimes they make a copying error. That error creates a polyp. Now, here is the good news that most people forget. Most polyps are not cancer. However, almost all colon cancer starts as a polyp. A polyp is like a seed. If you catch that seed while it's small, a doctor can snip it out during a routine colonoscopy in about 5 minutes, and you are cured. You don't need chemo, you don't need surgery. But if that seed is allowed to grow for years, it turns into a mass. That mass is what creates the bottleneck that thins out your stool. When you're over 60, you know your body better than anyone else. You know what has been normal for you for the last 6 decades. If that normal suddenly shifts into pencil-thin territory, do not let a doctor, a friend, or your own inner voice tell you it's just age. Aging is a natural process. A physical blockage is a medical event. Catching the change in your stool shape is how we find those seeds before they have the chance to grow roots. It's the difference between a simple procedure and a life-altering diagnosis. There is a second sign that often goes hand in hand with those thin, pencil-like stools, and it is a symptom that most people find incredibly difficult to describe to their doctor. It has a medical name you've probably never heard: Tenesmus. Have you ever had that experience where you finish using the bathroom, you stand up, you wash your hands, and then, not even 5 minutes later, you feel like you have to go again? You go back, you sit down, you strain, but nothing happens. Or perhaps only a tiny, thin fragment of waste comes out. This is an incredibly frustrating, heavy, and often distressing feeling in your lower abdomen. It's a sensation of incomplete evacuation. You feel like you are never quite empty. Many seniors mistake this for simple gas or a bit of indigestion. But when this feeling becomes a daily occurrence, we have to look at the mechanics of what is happening inside your rectum. To understand tenesmus, you have to understand how your brain and your gut talk to each other. Your rectum is lined with highly sensitive nerves. Their only job is to detect fullness. When waste enters the rectum, it stretches those walls. Those nerves then send a lightning-fast signal to your brain that says, "Incoming. Time to find a bathroom." But here is the trap. Your nerves are not smart enough to tell the difference between stool and a solid mass. If a tumor is growing in the lower part of the colon or the rectum, it takes up physical space. It presses against those sensitive walls 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Your brain receives a constant, unrelenting signal that the tank is full. Your body reacts by trying to flush that mass out. It triggers the muscles to contract. It gives you that urgent cramping feeling, and it makes you feel like you're in a state of constant emergency. But because that growth is attached to the colon wall, it isn't going anywhere. You can sit there and strain for an hour, but you can't pass a tumor. The alarm combination. This is why the combination of these two things is so critical. 1. The shape. Your stool is coming out thin because it's squeezing past a growth. 2. The feeling. You feel like you still have to go because your nerves are detecting that very same growth. When you have thin stools plus tenesmus, your body is effectively giving you a 3D map of the problem. It is telling you exactly where the blockage is. If you are experiencing this, I need you to listen to me very carefully. This is not something you wait and see about. This isn't a maybe it's my diet situation. This is a mechanical issue that requires a professional to look inside. If you are over 60 and you feel this constant, heavy pressure coupled with a change in stool shape, that is a combination that requires a doctor's appointment this week. Not next month. This week. Be prepared for the doctor to ask you if you've seen blood, but even if you haven't, this never-empty feeling is a primary red flag that deserves an immediate referral for a colonoscopy. Now, we've spent a lot of time talking about the shape, the physical architecture of what's happening in your body. But there is a second layer to this warning system that is just as vital, and that is color. I want to clear up a very dangerous misconception right now. Most people believe that if they don't see bright, vivid red blood in the toilet, they don't have to worry about cancer. They think, if I'm not bleeding red, I'm safe. But in the world of oncology and gastroenterology, that logic can be a fatal mistake. The red herring, bright red blood, is what we call fresh blood. It's scary, and it usually gets people to call a doctor immediately. However, bright red blood often comes from the very end of the line, the rectum or the anus. It's frequently caused by hemorrhoids, small tears, or localized irritation. While you should never ignore it, it isn't always the silent messenger we're looking for. The color you should be truly concerned about, the one that acts as a quiet, dark warning of something deeper, is black. The mystery of melena, when a growth or a tumor is located higher up in your colon, closer to where your small intestine meets the large intestine, it may bleed slowly. As that blood travels through the 4 or 5 feet of your digestive tract, it undergoes a chemical transformation. It is exposed to stomach acid, digestive enzymes, and billions of bacteria. By the time that blood exits your body, it has been digested. It doesn't look like blood anymore. It looks like road tar. Doctors call this melena. It isn't just dark brown. It is a deep, midnight black. It has a very specific, sticky, or tacky consistency, almost like syrup or wet coal. And there is one more thing people rarely talk about: the smell. Digested blood has a very metallic, pungent, and incredibly foul odor that is distinct from anything else you've ever experienced in the bathroom. If you notice your stool has turned this tar black color and it's becoming narrow or thin, your body is telling you that there is an internal wound that isn't healing. The supplements trap. Now, if you are over 60, there is a very good chance you are taking a daily multivitamin or perhaps an iron supplement for anemia. As many of you know, iron can turn your stool a very dark color. This is where the trap happens. Many seniors see dark stool and think, "Oh, it's just my vitamins. I'll mention it at my checkup in 6 months." Do not make that assumption. Here is how you tell the difference. Iron-induced stool is usually firm and dry. Blood-induced black stool, melena, is almost always sticky, tarry, and loose. If you see that tar-like texture, and especially if it's accompanied by that pencil-thin shape we talked about, you are not looking at a side effect of a vitamin. You are looking at a medical emergency in the making. Sometimes the color isn't pitch black, but a deep, dark maroon or plum color. This usually indicates that the bleeding is happening somewhere in the middle of the colon. It hasn't been digested long enough to turn black, but it stayed in the body long enough to lose that bright red freshness. If you are over 60, your normal should be some variation of brown. If you move into the gothic colors, the deep purples, the maroons, or the midnight blacks, your body is signaling a breach in the system. When you combine those colors with a change in shape, you have the full picture. Your body is waving a red flag. It's just that the flag happens to be black. Please, if you see this, don't wait for pain. Colon cancer is a quiet disease. It doesn't always hurt until it's very advanced, but it always leaves a trail. The color of your stool is that trail. Follow it to your doctor's office immediately. I don't want you to leave this video feeling scared. I want you to leave feeling prepared. Here is your 3-step plan. Step 1. The 14-day observation. If you see thin stool once, don't panic. It could be diet. But if you see it consistently for 14 days, it is no longer an accident. It is a pattern. Step 2. Don't just ask for a checkup. When you call your doctor, you need to be specific. Do not just say my stomach hurts. Say this exactly: I have noticed a persistent change in the caliber and shape of my stool for 2 weeks. It is narrow and ribbon-like. I am concerned about a bowel obstruction or a growth, and I would like to discuss a colonoscopy. Step 3. The gold standard. At 60, don't rely solely on the mail-in poop tests you see on TV commercials. While they are better than nothing, they can miss certain types of polyps. A colonoscopy is the only way for a doctor to see exactly what is happening and, in many cases, remove the problem right then and there while you're asleep. Your health is in your hands, but it's also in your habits. Checking the toilet before you flush is a 3-second habit that can give you another 30 years of life. Please share this video with a friend or a spouse. It's an awkward conversation to have, but it's much easier than the conversation you'll have to have if you wait too long. I'm here to help you navigate these years with strength and clarity. If you found this helpful, let me know in the comments. Have you ever noticed these changes? Your story might encourage someone else to go get checked.